Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who joins us from around the world.
We're so glad you're here.
This is Andrew and Renee. Welcome to the Stacks series.
It is absolutely wonderful to be here.
Today, we are exploring inflammaging.
Inflammaging.
And I have to be honest, when I first saw that term in our research stack, I really had to do a double take. It looks like a typo.
It does.
It looks like someone just mashed inflammation and aging together on a keyboard and, just hoped it would catch on.
It's a very intentional mashup, though, and a very accurate one.
Well, as I started digging through the papers, and we have an incredible stack today from Nature Aging, clinical reviews, all of it, I realized this is so much more than just a clever buzzword.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like it could be a kind of unified theory of why we get sick as we get older.
That's the direction the entire field of geroscience is heading. For the longest time, the common view of aging was, well, it was very mechanical.
Like a car wearing out.
Exactly like a car. You drive it for 60, 70, 80 years, the tires go bald, the engine starts to knock, the paint peels. It's just simple wear and tear.
Right, the idea that you're just sort of passively degrading,
Right.
Running out of parts.
Precisely. But the concept of inflammaging flips that whole idea on its head. It suggests that aging isn't this passive process of decay.
It's an active process.
An active immune-mediated process. To borrow the analogy that just keeps appearing in all this literature, aging is a fire.
A fire. Okay, let's unpack that. Because when I hear the word inflammation, my first thought isn't about aging. My first thought is, a sprained ankle.
Right.
Or a bee sting. It gets red, it gets swollen, it hurts for a few days, and then it's gone. That's inflammation.
And that is a perfect example of acute inflammation. It's absolutely vital we make that distinction right from the very beginning.
So there's a good kind and a bad kind.
There's a necessary kind. Acute inflammation is the good guy. It's your body's elite emergency response team.
The paramedics rushing to the scene.
Yes. You get a cut on your finger. Bacteria swarm in. Your immune system sounds the alarm, and that response team rushes in, lights flashing, sirens blaring.
Mm-hmm.
They release chemicals to neutralize the invaders, they raise the temperature to speed up repairs, and they clear out all the debris.
Mm.
And when the job is done, they go home.
The swelling goes down, the redness fades, everything goes back to normal.
That is a healthy, successful, life-saving inflammatory response. The fire department puts out the kitchen fire and goes back to the station.
Okay, so that's the good fire. What's the fire of inflammaging?
Inflammaging is different. Imagine the fire alarm goes off, the trucks arrive, but there's no visible flame.
No kitchen fire.
No. Maybe there's a tiny smoldering ember deep inside a wall, something they can't quite see or reach. So the alarm, it just never shuts off.
Oh, that's madness.
It just keeps ringing day in and day out. A low, constant, irritating background noise. That is inflammaging.
So how do the researchers define it? What's the technical term?
The formal definition is a chronic, sterile, low-grade systemic inflammation.
Okay, that's 4 really heavy adjectives. Let's break those down.
Let's do it.
Chronic is easy enough. It means it doesn't stop. Low grade means it's not a raging fever. It's just simmering.
Right. It's a low burn. And systemic means it's not just in your ankle. It's everywhere, your whole body.
But the one that really got me was sterile. What does that mean? How can you have inflammation without an infection?
That is the absolute key to this entire concept. Sterile means this fire is burning in the complete absence of an obvious external threat.
So you don't have the flu. You don't have a staph infection.
Correct. There is no invading army. The alarm calls are coming from inside the house.
So the body is fighting a war against itself. Against what?
In many ways, it's fighting the byproducts of the aging process itself. The body starts to perceive its own internal damage and debris as a foreign threat.
Wow. And this idea, it's not brand new, is it?
No, not at all, though it's gaining huge momentum now. The term was actually coined back in the year 2000 by a researcher named Dr. Claudio Francesi.
What did he notice?
He noticed that as people got older, even if they were clinically healthy, their blood work showed this constant low-level hum of immune activation, this background noise.
And the stakes for understanding this seem incredibly high. I was looking through the list of diseases that are linked to this smoldering fire. It's basically a list of everything we're afraid of getting as we age.
It is the laundry list of modern mortality, unfortunately. Cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, type 2 diabetes, most cancers, frailty, sarcopenia.
Sarcopenia, that's the age-related muscle loss, right?
Yes, that debilitating loss of strength and function. And the evidence is piling up that inflammaging isn't just a symptom of these diseases, it's a fundamental driver.
So it might be the root cause? The soil from which all these different diseases grow.
It could very well be the central risk factor that connects all of them.
Which means if you could figure out how to put out this one fire, or even just turn down the heat,
You wouldn't just be treating one disease.
you could potentially delay or prevent all of them at the same time.
That is the central promise of geroscience. It's a complete paradigm shift in medicine. And that's why this is so important.
Okay. I am convinced. So where does this fire start? If my body is burning, I want to know who the arsonist is. Who lit the match?
And that's the complexity of it. It's not a single arsonist. It's more like a conspiracy, a group of different biological failures all contributing to the same problem.
Of course it is. Nothing in biology is ever simple.
But we can break them down into categories. For our conversation today, we're going to start with the foundations, what we think are the main biological drivers.
The pillars of inflammaging.
Exactly. Then we'll move into the active debate, the big question scientists are still arguing about. After that, the really exciting part, the frontiers.
What we can do about it.
What might change everything. And finally, we'll talk about the broader implications for all of us.
All right, let's start with those foundations. What is happening at the cellular level to kick this whole thing off?
Well, if we have to pick one prime suspect, the one that gets the most attention, we have to start with cellular senescence.
The zombie cells. I see this term everywhere now. It's a very memorable name.
It's very evocative, and for good reason. But to really understand why they're a problem, you first have to understand why they exist at all. Because senescence originally is a good thing.
It's a safety feature. I thought they were the bad guys.
They become the bad guys.
Yeah.
But they start as heroes. Imagine you have a healthy cell in your skin or your liver. It divides, makes copies of itself, does its job.
Right.
But over time, it accumulates damage. Maybe its DNA gets a mutation from sun exposure. Maybe its telomeres, those little protective caps on the ends of the chromosomes, get worn down too short.
Okay.
At that point, the cell faces a critical choice. If it keeps dividing with all that damage, what could it become?
Cancer.
Exactly, a tumor. So the body has this brilliant built-in safety brake. The cell senses the danger and slams on the brakes. It enters a state of permanent arrest. It will never divide again.
It takes itself out of the game for the good of the whole organism.
That's the noble sacrifice it's supposed to make. But here's the twist. The cell stops dividing, but it doesn't die. It's not cleared away.
It lingers.
It lingers. It just sits there in the tissue, taking up space. And that's why we call them zombie cells. They're not fully alive in the sense that they can reproduce, but they're definitely not dead.
So they're just loitering in my tissues.
They're loitering with intent because they are not quiet neighbors. They switch gears and become metabolically hyperactive. They start to secrete a toxic cocktail of chemicals.
And this is the SASP I read about. SASP.
The senescence-associated secretory phenotype. It's a mouthful, but just think of it as a constant blaring distress signal.
Okay.
These zombie cells are just pumping out a torrent of pro-inflammatory cytokines molecules with names like interleukin-6, IL-1 beta, TNF-alpha. They're screaming at the top of their lungs, "Help! I'm damaged! Danger! Come fix this!"
But if they're screaming for help, why doesn't the immune system just, come and eat them, get rid of them?
When we're young, it does. That's how the system is supposed to work perfectly. A cell becomes senescent. It sends up the SASP flare. The immune system homes in on that signal, clears out the zombie cell, and the tissue stays healthy and clean.
But as we get older...
As we age, and we'll get into the details of this later, the immune system gets a bit slow, a bit deaf. It doesn't hear the screams as clearly, or it's too busy to respond.
So the zombie cells just keep screaming and they start to pile up.
They keep screaming and they accumulate. And here's where it gets really, really problematic. That SASP signal isn't just noise. It's contagious.
Wait, contagious? How can a cell be contagious? You don't mean one zombie cell can bite another and turn it into a zombie?
It's the biological equivalent of that. We call it paracrine senescence. The inflammatory toxins being spewed out by that one zombie cell. They act like a poison to the healthy, normal cells right next to it.
No way.
Yes. They damage those healthy neighbors, and that damage causes them to become senescent. So you start with one zombie, and before you know it, you have a whole cluster. Then a whole patch of inflamed, dysfunctional tissue.
That's horrifying. It's like one rotten apple spoiling the entire barrel.
That's a perfect analogy. Or like a spot of mold on a piece of bread that just spreads and spreads until the whole loaf is bad. And that local rot generates a constant, systemic, inflammatory signal that leaks out into your bloodstream. That's pillar number one.
Okay, that is a very strong and very unsettling start. Zombie cells spreading rot. What's pillar number two?
Pillar number 2 is what the researchers have cleverly termed garb-aging.
Garb-aging, as in garbage and aging. I do appreciate a good pun.
It's memorable, isn't it? And it describes the problem perfectly. The accumulation of molecular debris.
Okay.
You have to think of each of your cells as a miniature, bustling city. It's constantly building proteins, manufacturing enzymes, generating energy, and just like any city, it produces trash.
Misfolded proteins, worn out parts of the cell, metabolic byproducts.
Exactly. And a healthy, functional cell city has a very efficient sanitation department.
Garbage trucks.
In the cell, this process is called autophagy, which literally means self-eating. The cell identifies its own junk, bundles it up, and sends it to a recycling center to be broken down into reusable parts. It's a beautiful system.
Let me guess. As we get older, the sanitation workers go on strike.
That's a great way to put it. The machinery of autophagy just slows down. It becomes less efficient. The garbage trucks don't come as often. The trash starts to pile up on the cellular sidewalk.
So we have these microscopic junk piles accumulating inside and outside our cells.
We do. Aggregates of tangled, misfolded proteins. Now, why does that cause inflammation?
I'm not sure. How does trash start a fire?
It's because your immune system is constantly on patrol, looking for things that are non-self. It's trained to recognize foreign shapes.
The shapes of bacteria or viruses.
Right. But when your own proteins get misfolded and clumped together into these weird, unnatural garbage piles, they don't look like self anymore. They look foreign. They look dangerous.
So the immune system gets confused.
It gets confused. It sees this pile of your own cellular debris and thinks, that's not supposed to be here. That must be an invader. So it attacks.
It launches an inflammatory attack against its own trash.
It tries to burn away a blockage that's made of your own waste products. So again, the fire is being lit by a failure of internal housekeeping.
Man. Okay. So zombie cells screaming and spreading rot, and now piles of garbage that our own body is setting on fire. What else could possibly go wrong?
Well, if we want to get to the very heart of the engine room, the source of the spark, we have to talk about the mitochondria.
The powerhouse of the cell. That's the one thing everybody remembers from 10th grade biology.
It's the one universal biological fact we all learn. But for this conversation, I want you to think of them less as a shiny, modern power plant and more like a collection of old, leaky, cracking nuclear reactors.
Okay, that sounds ominous.
And to really get why they cause inflammation, we have to take a trip back in time. Deep time. About 2 billion years ago.
2 billion. All right, where are we going?
2 billion years ago, mitochondria were not part of us. They were their own thing. They were free-living bacteria floating around in the primordial soup.
Okay.
At some point, a larger, more complex cell swallowed one of these bacteria. But instead of digesting it, they struck a deal, a symbiosis. The little bacterium would produce energy for the big cell, and the big cell would provide protection and resources.
And that partnership is the basis for all complex life, including us.
It is. Our cells are essentially ancient chimeras containing these former bacteria, and that is the root of the problem.
How so?
Because they were once bacteria, they still have their own DNA. It's called mitochondrial DNA, or mtDNA. And here's the crucial part. To your immune system, that mtDNA looks and smells exactly like foreign bacterial DNA.
It has the same chemical signature.
And it's the same signature. It looks like an invader.
I think I see where this is going. It's a ticking time bomb of mistaken identity.
It is a massive containment problem.
Yeah.
When you're young and healthy, your mitochondria are robust. They keep that dangerous-looking DNA locked up tight inside their double-layered membranes.
The reactor is sealed.
It's sealed. But as we age, as they get damaged by oxidative stress, those membranes get brittle, they get fragile, they start to leak.
The reactor core is breached.
The core is breached, and this foreign mitochondrial DNA spills out into the main body of the cell, the cytoplasm. Now, your cell has alarm systems, sensors, patrolling the cytoplasm, specifically looking for signs of a viral or bacterial invasion.
And when those sensors bump into this leaked mitochondrial DNA...
They freak out. They hit the panic button.
Yeah.
The signal goes out. We've been breached. There's a hostile agent inside the perimeter.
Oh my gosh.
And this triggers a very specific, very powerful, and very aggressive piece of cellular machinery called the NLRP3 inflammasome.
The NLRP3 inflammasome. That sounds like a weapon system from a science fiction movie.
It basically acts like one. The literature describes it as a hair trigger alarm. I like to think of it as the nervous neighbor of the cellular world.
The one who calls the police because a cat walked across their lawn.
Exactly. The NLRP3 inflammasome detects this leaked mitochondrial debris, which, remember, is part of you. And it immediately assembles itself into a molecular firing squad. It starts churning out these high-intensity inflammatory molecules, especially IL-1 beta. It pulls the 5-alarm fire bell because it's convinced the cell is under a massive bacterial assault.
But it's not. It's just old, leaky battery.
Correct. So your immune system is now fighting a ghost war against your own evolutionary history. Because we are this hybrid organism, when the internal walls start to break down with age, one part of us starts attacking the other part.
That is just wild. It completely reframes what it means to be a single organism. We're a fragile alliance that eventually frays at the seams.
It's a very delicate cooperation.
Okay, so we've got the triggers. Zombies, trash, leaky mitochondria. But what about the immune system itself? You said earlier it gets slower at clearing the zombie cells. If it's slower, shouldn't we have less inflammation, not more? How do you get a bigger fire if the fire department is getting old and slow?
That is the great central paradox of immunosenescence, or the aging of the immune system. It's not that this system just gets weak, it gets dysfunctional. It becomes simultaneously hyperactive and hypoeffective.
Hyperactive but hypoeffective. What does that mean?
It means it's making a lot of noise, but not doing its job properly. So on one side, your adaptive immune system, the highly trained special forces, your T cells and B cells that remember specific viruses, that part gets weaker. Your thymus gland, which is basically the military academy where T cells go to train, it shrinks away to almost nothing by the time you're 60. This is called thymic involution.
So you're not training any new soldiers?
Very few new soldiers. This is why older people are so much more vulnerable to new infections like the flu or COVID. They have fewer naive T cells ready to learn how to fight a new enemy.
Okay, so the special forces are retiring and the academy is closed.
Yes, but at the same time, the innate immune system, the first responders, the street cops, like macrophages, they get, well, the best word is grumpy.
Grumpy cops.
They lose their precision, but they become extremely trigger-happy. They are constantly in a state of low-level agitation. They're not actually very good at their main job anymore, like eating bacteria. One study showed they're worse at clearing E. coli. But they are very, very good at shouting and firing their weapons into the air.
So they're just firing off inflammatory signals at anything that looks remotely suspicious.
At the cellular garbage, at the zombie cells, the mitochondrial debris. But they aren't effectively cleaning up the root problem.
So you end up with fewer elite soldiers and a bunch of jumpy, irritable patrolmen shooting at shadows.
That is a surprisingly accurate description of immunosenescence. You get this bizarre state of high inflammation but low immunity. It's the worst of both worlds.
And I imagine, to round out this perfect storm, we have to talk about the gut. The microbiome seems to be central to everything we discuss these days.
You can't talk about systemic inflammation without talking about the gut. As we age, we see a major shift called dysbiosis.
A loss of balance.
A huge loss of diversity and balance. The good guys, the beneficial bacteria like Bifidobacterium and Faecalibacterium prausnetzi, their populations plummet. And these are the species that help maintain a healthy gut lining.
And I'm guessing the bad guys move in to take their place.
The pro-inflammatory pathobionts start to flourish. But the biggest problem isn't just the change in population, it's the wall. It's the gut barrier.
The lining of the intestines.
Yes. As those good bacteria disappear, that wall, which is only one cell thick, by the way, starts to become permeable. We call it leaky gut.
And things can leak from the gut directly into the bloodstream.
Not just whole bacteria, but pieces of them. In particular, a molecule called LPS lipopolysaccharide. It's a potent endotoxin found on the outer wall of certain bacteria. When APS leaks into your bloodstream, your immune system sees it and assumes you have a massive body-wide blood infection.
Sepsis.
It mimics sepsis. It puts the entire immune system on constant red alert. We call this bacterial denemia. And it's a major, major driver of that chronic, low-grade systemic fire.
Wow. So let me just recap the foundations here. We have zombie cells spreading inflammatory contagion. We have piles of cellular garbage being set on fire. We have leaky ancient mitochondria tricking our cells into thinking they're being invaded. We have a grumpy, ineffective immune system shooting at everything. And we have a leaky gut pouring bacterial toxins into our blood.
It really is a perfect storm, isn't it?
Yeah.
It explains why inflammaging is so pervasive. The attack is coming from every possible angle.
It feels completely overwhelming. But I suppose understanding all the different mechanisms is the first step toward figuring out how to stop them.
It has to be. You can't fight a fire if you don't know where it's coming from.
Right. But science is never completely settled. Even with this mountain of evidence, the research points to some really big questions, some things that just don't seem to add up.
Never. And that brings us perfectly to our next section, the active debate, where the science is still arguing with itself.
And the biggest puzzle, the one that seems to challenge the whole theory, involves the centenarians.
The centenarian paradox. This is one of the most fascinating corners of aging research.
Okay, walk me through this, because it seems like a complete contradiction. We've just established that inflammation is the great villain. It drives all the diseases of aging.
Right. High inflammation equals high risk.
So logically, you would assume that someone who lives to be 105 must have the lowest inflammation levels on the planet. They should be biologically cool as a cucumber.
That is the perfectly logical assumption. If the fire is what kills everyone else, the ultimate survivors must be fireproof. They must have no fire.
But the data says the exact opposite. I was stunned to read that many of these superagers have incredibly high levels of inflammatory markers. Their IL-6 and C-reactive protein levels are sometimes as high as someone in the hospital with a severe infection.
It's true.
So what on earth is going on? If the fire is so deadly, why are the oldest people alive walking around with it?
This is the mystery that's pushing the whole field forward. And the leading theory is incredible because it forces us to redefine what healthy aging even means. It suggests that extreme longevity isn't about the absence of fire.
It's about something else.
It's about having a better fire department, a better sprinkler system.
The sprinkler system.
When researchers look more closely at the blood of these centenarians, yes, they see all the pro-inflammatory fire signals. But right alongside them, in equally high amounts, they find massive levels of anti-inflammatory cytokines.
The off switches.
The master off switches, molecules like IL-10 and TGF-beta, these are the signals that tell the immune system, stand down, calm down, the danger is past.
So they have both the gas pedal and the brake pedal floored at the same time.
That's a fantastic way to put it. They've achieved this unique, high-stakes biological balance. They have all the damage and debris of a 100-year-old body, which generates the fire, but they have the anti-inflammatory response of a young person on steroids.
So they're not avoiding the damage of aging, they're just unbelievably good at managing the consequences.
Exactly. Most of us, as we age, we lose the ability to produce those powerful anti-inflammatory signals. Our sprinkler systems get rusty and clogged. The centenarians somehow keep the water pressure sky high their whole lives.
That is a profound mental shift. We tend to think of health as getting rid of the problem, but this suggests the problem. The damage might be inevitable. The real secret to health span is in the response to the problem.
It's about resilience, not purity. You can live with the garbage piling up as long as you have a hyper-efficient crew constantly managing it so it doesn't rot the entire house down.
Incredible. Okay, another major debate highlighted in the sources is the classic chicken or the egg question. Cause versus consequence.
Yes, this comes up constantly. Does inflammation cause the damage of aging, or does the damage of aging cause the inflammation?
And I have a feeling the answer is going to be yes.
It's absolutely yes. It's what we call a bidirectional vicious cycle. It's a feedback loop.
So the mitochondrial leak causes inflammation.
And that inflammation then further damages other mitochondria, causing them to leak, which creates more inflammation.
It's a fire that fuels itself.
It is. But the reason the field has coalesced around the term inflammaging is because when you intervene to block the inflammation, when you artificially dampen the fire in animal models, you can actually reverse some of the functional declines of aging. That strongly suggests that inflammation isn't just a consequence, it's an active driver of the process.
Now here's something in the material that I found really interesting and often overlooked. The differences between men and women.
Yes, the sex differences in inflammaging are significant, and we're only just beginning to understand them properly.
The research points to estrogen as being a key player.
Estrogen is, for the most part, anti-inflammatory. It acts as a kind of natural shield, keeping the immune system in check. This is why, on average, premenopausal women have lower baseline levels of inflammation than men of the same age.
But then menopause happens.
The shield drops. Estrogen levels plummet. And what we often see is a dramatic acceleration of inflammaging in women. The fire, which was smoldering, suddenly gets a lot more oxygen.
And this might explain why certain age-related conditions, especially autoimmune-style ones, are more common in women later in life.
It's a leading hypothesis. Men, on the other hand, tend to have a higher, steadier burn of inflammation throughout their adult lives. It's more of a long, slow ramp for men versus a steeper cliff for women post-menopause. The path to age-related disease looks different.
And that has huge implications for treatment. A one-size-fits-all approach is not going to work.
Not at all. And the last big debate is local versus systemic. We measure inflammation with a blood test because it's easy. But is the fire actually in the blood?
Or is the blood just carrying the smoke from fires that are burning elsewhere?
Exactly. And the emerging evidence is pointing to the smoke. It seems the fires often start in specific tissues. A big one is visceral fat, the fat around your organs.
We call that metaflammation, right? Metabolic inflammation.
Yes. That fat tissue becomes inflamed, and then it acts like a factory pumping inflammatory signals out into the bloodstream that travel all over the body.
So a fire in your belly can literally cause a fire in your brain.
It can. The research talks about the communicum tiny bubbles called extracellular vesicles that bud off from an inflamed organ, travel through the blood, and deliver an inflammatory message to a distant organ. The blood is the highway, but the fires are in the cities.
Okay, so we've mapped out the problem in incredible detail. The house is on fire from multiple sources, the alarm is broken, and the fire department is grumpy. This is usually the part of our exploration where I have to ask, is there any hope? Or are we just describing an inevitable bonfire?
There is immense hope. This is where we get to the frontiers section. And honestly, the science here is moving at an unbelievable speed. We are no longer just fire watchers describing the blaze. We are actively designing and building fire extinguishers.
Let's get into those solutions. I want to start with a compound that appeared again and again in the research stack, urolithin A. And there was one paper in particular from Nature Aging by Denk and colleagues that seemed like a huge deal. This wasn't just another eat more pomegranates study, was it?
No, this was a landmark human clinical trial. Urolithin A is a postbiotic. It's what your gut bacteria make when you eat things like pomegranates or walnuts. But this study wasn't about diet. They gave people a purified high dose of the compound itself.
And what makes this study so important is what they measured. They weren't just asking people, so do you feel better? They were looking deep inside the immune system's engine.
They were looking at the fundamental mechanics, and what they found after just 4 weeks was stunning.
So 1,000 milligrams a day for 4 weeks, what were the results?
There were several, but let's focus on 2 huge ones. First, remember how we talked about the thymus shrinking and how you run out of new T-cell recruits?
The sniper school closing down?
Right. Well, after just 28 days on urolithin A, these older adults showed a significant expansion of their pool of naive CD8 plus T-cells.
So it was like the school reopened, they were restocking the barracks with fresh soldiers?
It was effectively making their T-cell profile look biologically younger and more prepared for new threats.
That's amazing for such a short intervention, but the part that really blew my mind was the metabolic rewiring. They talk about T-cells switching their fuel source.
This is maybe the most profound finding. Think of T-cells like cars. When they get old and exhausted, they tend to run on glucose.
Sugar.
A quick and dirty fuel.
Exactly. It's like burning cheap, low-octane gas. You get a quick burst of energy, but it's inefficient and creates a lot of smoke and a lot of oxidative stress.
So old, worn-out immune cells are sugar-addicted gas guzzlers. That's a great way to think about it. Now, young, healthy, long-lived memory T cells, they prefer a different fuel. They run on fatty acid oxidation. They burn fat.
A cleaner fuel source.
A much cleaner, slower, more sustainable energy source. It allows them to patrol for decades without burning out.
And urolithin A managed to flip that switch back.
It forced the old, exhausted T cells to shift their metabolism away from burning sugar and back to burning fat. It restored their metabolic flexibility, making them behave like young cells again.
It's like it took a sputtering old car engine and gave it a full tune-up.
And this wasn't just a change on a chart. They then took these rejuvenated immune cells out of the patients and exposed them to E. coli bacteria in a dish.
The real-world test.
And the cells were significantly better at eating and clearing the bacteria than they were before the treatment. It was a real functional improvement in immunity.
So it's not just changing numbers, it's improving the body's actual resilience to infection.
That's the holy grail. And the underlying mechanism is that urolithin A is a potent inducer of mitophagy.
Mitophagy. Mito for mitochondria, phagy for eating. So it helps the cell eat its own old leaky mitochondria.
Exactly. It cleans up the source of the leak, which silences the NLRP3 alarm, which allows the cell to reset and function properly. It's a beautiful, elegant mechanism.
Okay, that's one major tool. What about going after the zombie cells directly? Let's talk about xenotherapeutics.
This is another huge frontier, and there are 2 main strategies here, senolytics and xenomorphics.
Senolytics are the assassins, right? They kill the zombie cells.
They do. This is a class of drugs, often a combination like dasatinib, which is a cancer drug, and quercetin, a compound from plants. Taken together, they selectively trigger apoptosis or program cell death, but only in the senescent zombie cells.
They push them over the edge so they finally die and get cleared away.
Precisely. And the really interesting thing about this strategy is that you probably wouldn't take them every day.
Right, it's a hit-and-run approach.
Yes. The idea is you might take a high dose for just a few days every few months to do a flush or a purge of the accumulated zombie cells, and then you stop.
Like a biological deep cleaning.
A scheduled purge. There are already clinical trials underway for things like diabetic kidney disease, and the early results are very promising.
And what about the other class, xenomorphics?
Xenomorphics are the silencers. They're more subtle. They don't actually kill the zombie cell. They just shut it up.
They put tape over its mouth?
They suppress the SASP. They block the zombie cell from spewing out all those inflammatory toxins. So the cell is still there, but it's no longer poisoning its neighbors.
It turns the rotten apple back into a quiet, neutral apple.
A metabolically quiet apple. In some tissues where you don't want to kill too many cells, this might actually be a safer long-term strategy.
Fascinating. Okay, we have to revisit the gut. If a leaky gut is a major source of fuel for the fire, can we patch the leak?
Absolutely. Microbiome restoration is looking incredibly powerful. We've seen in animal studies that fecal microbiota transplants,
Poop youth serum.
the infamous poop youth serum, yes, transferring the gut bacteria from a young, healthy mouse to an old mouse can reverse signs of inflammaging in the brain and the eyes.
I don't see that becoming a popular cosmetic treatment for humans anytime soon.
Perhaps not in that exact form. But the science is leading to next-gen probiotics. We're not talking about the generic bacteria in your yogurt. We're talking about very specific, targeted strains.
Like Akkermansia mucinifila, that one came up a lot.
Akkermansia is the rock star right now. It's found in very high abundance in the guts of centenarians. And it has a strange job. It lives on the mucus that lines your gut.
It eats the protective lining. That sounds...
It sounds terrible, but it has a paradoxical effect. By gently grazing on the mucus, it stimulates your own gut cells to produce more fresh, thick mucus. It's like exercise for your gut lining. It keeps the barrier strong and healthy.
So it strengthens the wall that keeps the toxins out?
Precisely. We're moving toward an era of precision microbiome engineering.
And in the meantime, what about just fiber?
Never, ever underestimate the power of simple dietary fiber. Things like inulin from chicory root or resistant starch. These are prebiotics. They are the food for your good bacteria.
And the good bacteria make beneficial compounds.
They make short-chain fatty acids like butyrate. Butyrate is the primary fuel for the cells that line your colon. It helps them seal the junctions between them, literally tightening up the leaky wall. It's the low-tech solution that absolutely works.
Okay, so we're seeing this whole toolkit emerge. We can rewire metabolism, kill zombies, seal the gut. It feels like we are on the cusp of a completely new kind of medicine.
We are. And that brings us to the final and perhaps most important section, the implications. Because if these tools work, it changes everything.
It really does. And the sources brought up this concept that, frankly, was a bit chilling but made so much sense. The two-hit hypothesis.
It's a very powerful framework for understanding vulnerability. The idea is that inflammaging is hit one.
It's the baseline condition?
Yes. Your system is already primed. It's distracted. The fire alarm is constantly buzzing in the background. Your immune system is already working at, say, 70% capacity, just dealing with all the internal zombies and garbage.
Okay, so you're already compromised.
You're already compromised. Then along comes hit two. That could be an infection like the flu or COVID-19. It could be a physical injury like a fall. It could be a major surgery.
A new acute stressor.
Right. And because the system was already weakened by hit one, it can't handle hit two effectively. It either overreacts, leading to something like a cytokine storm, or it underreacts because it's too exhausted to mount a proper defense.
And that explains so much about the age discrepancy we see with viruses.
It's the best explanation we have for why a 25-year-old can get a virus and have mild symptoms, while an 85-year-old gets the exact same virus and ends up in the ICU. The 25-year-old didn't have hit one. Their system was quiet, rested, and ready.
And I saw that long COVID was mentioned specifically in this context.
It's a potential real-world example. The theory is that for some people, the acute COVID infection hit two triggers, or dramatically worsens their underlying inflammaging hit. One leading to persistent, unresolved inflammation, particularly in the brain.
The brain fog that so many people report.
That's very likely neuroinflammation. It's a stark reminder that the brain is not isolated. The body's fire can and does across the blood-brain barrier.
So managing your baseline inflammaging isn't just about some abstract goal of living longer. It's about having the resilience to survive the challenges that life throws at you right now.
Resilience is the perfect word. It's about increasing your physiological buffer.
This has to lead to a complete reframing of how we manage disease. Our current model is, well, it's reactive. You get high blood pressure, we give you a pill for that. You get high blood sugar, we give you a pill for that.
It's a game of medical whack-a-mole.
It is. We're just chasing symptoms.
The geroscience hypothesis, which is built on this foundation of inflammaging, says, stop whacking the individual moles. Go find the machine that's making them pop up and unplug it.
If you treat the upstream cause, the biological process of aging itself, you might prevent or delay the heart disease, the diabetes, the Alzheimer's, and the frailty all at once.
That is the goal.
But is our medical system, our regulatory system, ready for that kind of shift?
Not yet. That's the major hurdle. Regulatory bodies like the FDA, for example, don't currently recognize aging as a treatable disease.
So you can't get a drug approved for anti-aging?
No. You have to prove your drug treats a specific, defined disease. This makes it incredibly difficult and expensive to bring these new geroscience compounds to the public. It's a huge systemic challenge.
We need a regulatory revolution to match the scientific one, and we need new ways to measure this.
We do. The future of the annual checkup shouldn't just be a cholesterol panel. It should include a measure of your cytokine load, or your inflammatory age, your eye age.
So your doctor could say, look, your chronological age is 50, but your inflammatory age is 70. We need to do something about this fire before your house burns down.
Exactly. That would be real, actionable, preventative medicine. It would shift the entire economic model from late-stage, expensive sick care to proactive health span extension.
And while we wait for all that to happen, the research is clear that there are things we can do right now. The whole concept of lifestyle as medicine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've talked about fiber, but the evidence for the Mediterranean diet as a whole is overwhelming. It consistently lowers inflammatory markers across the board.
Because it's full of those anti-inflammatory polyphenols and healthy fats.
And low in the pro-inflammatory processed sugars and industrial seed oils.
What about exercise?
Exercise is a potent anti-inflammatory. When you contract your muscles, they release molecules called myokines.
Right.
And many of these myokines are powerful anti-inflammatory signals. Your muscles are, in effect, an endocrine organ that fights the fire. But the key caveat from the sources is that over-exercising without adequate recovery can actually increase inflammation. It's all about finding that hormetic sweet spot.
The dose makes the poison.
And the recovery makes the medicine. And finally, stress. We can't forget stress.
Chronic stress and cortisol.
Chronic high cortisol dysregulates your entire immune system. It's like constantly pouring gasoline on those smoldering embers. Stress management isn't a luxury. It's a physiological necessity for controlling this fire.
So we have covered an immense amount of ground here, from the origins of life and leaky mitochondria to zombie cells and the future of medicine. What is the final provocative thought you think we should leave our listeners with?
I think it's this. For the entirety of human history, aging has been viewed as a kind of fate, an inevitable decline. It was something that happened to you, and you just had to endure it.
It was written in stone.
It was. But what this entire field of research is telling us is that we are moving from an era of inevitable decline to one of modifiable biology.
The breakdown is not a fixed rate.
The rate of breakdown is adjustable. We're learning where the levers and dials are. And if we succeed, if we actually learn how to turn down the fire of inflammaging, we don't just add more years to the end of life. We could fundamentally change what it means to be human in the later decades of life.
A future where being 80 or 90 might feel biologically like being 50 or 60 today?
And that raises the ultimate question. If we change the biological reality of what old means, how does that change the entire structure of our society, our careers, our relationships, our definition of a full life?
That is a massive question to end on. The idea that old age might become a choice rather than a destiny.
It's a very hopeful and very disruptive horizon.
Before we wrap up, thank you to all our partners, sponsors, and scholars who made this podcast and the research possible. We're truly grateful for your support.
And to our listeners, thank you for being part of this journey with us. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and follow Stack Studios for more informative content, and support us on Patreon.
Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and let the search for wisdom guide you forward. Have a great day.